Well, hello there, everybody in the wonderful world of YouTubes. First of all, if you could just let me know if you can see and hear and everything sounds okay, that would be absolutely phenomenal. This is a bit of a last-minute live, as well, I'm pretty sure you are used to be doing now anyway, but it's kind of, well, it's 2024, and I kind of thought it'd be a bit of fun to just hop on a live stream, answer a few questions, have a bit of a chat this afternoon, and just kick 2024 off with a little bit of style. So please do let me know in the chat if everything looks and sounds okay. You can hear me, you can see me, and everything else is good. And then we'll go through and say a couple of welcomes, and we'll just have a general chat. But, thank you very much, Tees. Thanks, very grateful for letting me know. Thank you very much. So, Rich, thank you very much for joining in. Javier, I hope I said that correctly. How are you doing? Robert, good to see you. Always a pleasure to see you. Hope you've had a good Christmas and New Year. Tees, thank you very much. Best wishes to you too. Tyler, just watching your 2024 prediction video. Well, I didn't predict in there that I would be live today, so maybe my predictions is going to be a little bit off. But it was a bit of fun to sort of make it anyway, because I think whenever you're in this kind of, WordPress space, it's something I think inevitably you're going to start to see things that you think, well, I think this is going to happen next year, or this isn't going to happen, blah, blah, blah. And I think it's interesting to just kind of reflect on that. And then at the end of the year, look back at those predictions and see how many were right, wrong, how far off or on base you were. I think it's just a bit of fun. But like I said in that video today, if you haven't seen it, check it out after the live stream. I'd love to know what your predictions for 2024 are with both, WordPress and web design in general, because I think it's kind of interesting to see, where we think we may be going, and then take, a little bit of a retrospective at the end of the year and see how off or on base we were with that. So let me know if you haven't seen that video, or if you want to talk about it in this little live stream. By all means, do let me know what you think is coming in 2024 for WordPress and the ecosystem around it, or web design in general. It's a bit of fun. Anyway, yo, good evening to you, or good afternoon, I should say, to you, Imran. Hope you're doing well. I see your live streams are going to start back up on Wednesday, so I'm sure I'll be jumping on there and catching up with you, but I hope you had a good Christmas and everything is good. Marcus, thank you very much for joining in. Pleasure to have you on the live stream. Now, if you are new to the live stream, first of all, if you enjoy what I'm doing on the live stream, give it a thumbs up, because it really does help the channel out and let YouTube know that you enjoy this kind of stuff. Secondly, if you've got any questions at all you want to sort of post to me, just please do make sure you do hashtag Q for question. That's hashtag Q, because it makes my life a little easier when I'm searching for questions to be able to answer them. Anyway, okay, well, thankfully, I'm glad you said that I'm just in your ear. So that's always good to know. But, keep it up. Keep the fitness regime up, Imran. It's always good to see that, you're keeping your hand in, or your foot in, or your leg in. You kind of get the idea what I'm talking about. Yo, Kermit. Say no more. Okay, so 2024. If you haven't already seen my predictions video that I put out literally just now, then I kind of got a few things in there that I think, we kind of have to take note of when it comes to WordPress, web design in general, and so on. But there's lots of other things I think that are happening inside the WordPress community. Some for good, some for bad, some for, whatever you kind of want to think. So first of all, let's have a quick talk about a video released yesterday, which is, the Elementor conditions video, which is their sort of dynamic visibility, or their visibility. Now, I understand that this is an MVP, in other words, a minimal viable product. They're just testing the waters out. But the one thing I did miss out in the video yesterday, which my sort of attention was sort of peaked to this, and I kind of went back and had a little bit more of a play around with it this morning, and kind of realized that there's one massive thing that's missing from it. Well, actually, there's two massive things that are missing from it. First of all, we only have and, we don't have or as an operator, which might sound like a little thing, but it is incredibly important, and it limits to what you can do when it comes to any kind of condition by about 50%. And the other thing that was kind of disappointing, and even though it is an MVP, minimum viable product, I don't really see any reason why they needed to release a MVP at all. Currently, you can't do anything with dynamic data at all. There's no functionality inside that condition or those conditions to be able to target custom post types, meta fields, those kinds of things. It's all very, very basic. So when you kind of consider there's a lot of other plugins out there, free plugins that do this and so much more, and plug into Elementor without the benefit of, being a core function, I don't really see why they couldn't have just released it with pretty much everything we need included. You could literally take a look at what other people have done, get the feedback on it, and you could release something. I never understand why release half a product or a third of a product or a third of a function when you know that the market wants it? They've been asking, if you look at GitHub, I think people were saying it's like, I know I've been asking for this for at least the last 3 to 4 years, but the earliest request for visibility conditions was 6 years ago. 6 years. Just think about that for a second. Why even bother worrying about releasing an MVP version of it? Just release it in its full and final version. If it takes you an extra week or month or 2 months, we've already been waiting 6 years for it anyway. So I really don't see any benefit to have released this MVP version of it. But hopefully this is something we will see the full fat version of it being released sooner rather than later. But historically, that hasn't really been the case. Most of the time, we'll get a function or a feature, and we'll have half of it, and we'll have to live with half of it for the next couple of years. I'm hoping that I'm wrong, but I put the question out there to you. If you are still using Elementor, please do let me know in the chat. And if you're watching this on replay, let me know in the comment section down below. If you are, what are your thoughts on this function? Have you been waiting a long time for it? Do you not really care about it? Do you think it's a little bit half-assed? Let me know. I'd love to get your feedback on this. Volker, thank you very much. Good to see you around you. I hope you had a good year and a good Christmas and everything is going well for you, my good man. The full version would be better. I agree. Like I say, I just don't really see the point in releasing. We're not talking about building something like, dynamic functionality, when they brought in the dynamic tags or bringing in the templating system, which are massive things. But they could still release those functions in a much fuller format. This is literally one tiny little portion of what's required with modern web design. Things, if you're playing catch up, which they are playing catch up in many, many respects to the likes of Bricks, Breakdance, Oxygen, and so on. I really don't see what the benefit of releasing half of it, is in 2024. You're already playing catch up to those other tools, and you are losing market share to those other tools. I mean, God, you've even got the block visibility plugin, which is now completely free for Gutenberg, which has way more functionality, including what's it called? Easy digital download integration, ACF integration, I think WooCommerce integration, as well as native functionality in WordPress itself. You're literally coming in late off the bat and you're coming in with half a product or half a feature. I really don't see the sense in it. If you want to claw back some of that market sector that you're losing, release the full thing. Make people go, exactly what I wanted, not a case of, well, there's part of it. Anyway, what are your thoughts? You let me know. Claudio, I agree. Happy to use conditions with bricks. I do think the bricks conditions side of things is way, way, way more powerful. And anybody that knows me knows that I've been really digging into bricks. I've literally left working with Elementor behind probably around 2 years ago. And while I still create some content on it, and I will continue to create some content on it, because there is a market out there, and I do have a pretty large sort of user base that have joined the channel and continue to watch the channel based upon, that side of content and that kind of thing that I've created. But when you just look at things, tools like bricks with a framework, whether that's core framework, ACSS, or any of the other options that are available. When you look at something like Advanced Thema, which opens up even more sort of possibilities, streamlines the interface and the workflow, once you kind of see how quick and easy it is to start working with frameworks, with those kinds of things, you very quickly go back and look at a tool like Elementor and realize that it is very ineffective when it comes to building sites. There's some nice features in there. Like I say, don't get me wrong, it still is the largest page builder out there for WordPress at this point in time, with about a 22% market share, which is massive. That's of all websites on the internet now, not just of, the page builder market. That's pretty impressive in its own right. But I do feel that that's going to change. And as part of my prediction of this year, I do think that they are going to lose market share. Not significantly, not to the point of being massively detrimental to them. But what I do think is, and I think I said this in my video today, if you kind of consider one of the biggest selling factors of Elementor to a lot of newer users, people that are not necessarily sort of on that sort of level of feeling comfortable building websites, but they want to have something that's visual and easy drag and drop and so on. When you were working with sections and containers and sections and inner sections and things like that, that was relatively easy to understand and relatively easy to get your head around. But now, because they're moving over, rightly so, into working with Flexbox and CSS Grid, that now takes it from being this difference between like bricks, for example, which is a little bit up there, should we say, when it comes to designing things. You need to have a bit of an understanding of, the structure of building pages, even at its most basic level. And Elementor was down there. Well, that's now coming back up and reaching a higher peak of, technical knowledge and understanding to get started using it. This is where I think they're going to start losing market share, because when you have something that's easy to start off with, it's an easy win for people that are not necessarily, that au fait with web design. And the fact you have a free platform is also very useful, very good. But when you level things out from a technical point of view and a sort of the skill level point of view, it makes it a bit of a harder sell when you want to go beyond the basics of what the free version can give you. Plus the fact that I think because they've now, in my opinion, gone the wrong route when it comes to their pricing structure. The first pricing plan, you don't have access to a lot of features, including these new sort of dynamic conditions. You don't have access to that if you have the bottom tier, the one license account. You have to go up to the next level to get access to that. There's a lot of things that, in my opinion, are not stacking up in their favor. And I do think the likes of Bricks, which is now already starting to get a lot more attention when it comes to content creators creating tutorials on it, from the basics through to more intermediate and advanced level tutorials. This is an area that once you get people on board, like myself, like Imran, like Jeffrey from Lightbox and so on, they're adopting and moving away from specifically only being Elementor tutors, trainers, educators, whatever you want to say. Then you level the playing field even more so, because now the barrier to entry is that much lower. And when you kind of compare the two, once you've bought into Bricks, for example, whether you buy the lifetime or you buy the sort of the annual subscription, there's no messing around with, well, you don't have access to this feature because, well, you're only paying the bottom amount of money and you only have one site or 3 sites or 5 sites. You have unlimited sites and you pay annually or you pay the lifetime. It's a much smarter approach, I think, unless of course the price is out of the window for a lot of people, at which point I do still think, and Bricks I believe are still doing this anyway, you still have that one single license if it's just you, but you're not being restricted anyway, you're not being sort of feature stripped. There's a lot of things I think are stacking up against Elementor. A lot of it is their own making. So I think 2024 we're going to see their market share dip a little bit in favor of tools like Bricks, Breakdance, and so on. And also, I think with Divi, with the rewriting of that, which is due to be released, I think, some point during 2024, it's interesting to see where that's going to go and how that's going to play into the equation. So I'm interested, and I really do think that Elementor are going to lose a bit of market share. And I think that's only going to get bigger as we get into 2025 and beyond. And we may even have some more players coming into the playing field. But I think with Breakdance, with Bricks, those two specifically, they are picking up a lot more attention and they're picking up a lot of users that are frustrated and fed up with Elementor and the speed, and I'm talking about in slow terms, the speed in which they're actually releasing features and not even fully featured features, and they're in experimental and they don't have the ability to work with frameworks, and updating bigger sites becomes slow and problematic, and developing sites can be slower and problematic. I say, until you've actually seen how frameworks and things like that speed up, and just not even just frameworks, but just having global classes, a class first based design tool like Bricks, you'll start to realize how much faster and how much more efficient you actually are using tools like that. And then you go back to a tool like Elementor, which I did yesterday, and you kind of feel like this feels less intuitive. It feels slower to work with. I kind of feel a little bit hampered in what I'm trying to do. But maybe that's just me. Let me have your thoughts in the chat. And like I say, if you're watching this on replay, drop this in the comment section because I'd love to find out what your thoughts are. But let's take a quick look at what we have when it comes to questions so I can see exactly what you guys are saying, which is always cool. Rich, with Elementor being... let me just pull that on screen. With Elementor being so behind on such functionality and being sluggish both on the front end and the back end, do you think they can recover enough? I think they have enough money behind them and enough of a user base that if they are smart, yes, they can recover. I don't think they're going to suddenly drop away from being, the #1 page builder anytime soon. I don't see it something that's going to happen overnight. And I really don't see the likes of Bricks or Breakdance having the same kind of user base that Elementor has. However, that's not to say that those other tools can't grow to be big in their own right. But I don't really see those, well, especially Bricks anyway. I can't speak for Breakdance because I don't really have much to do with it. But I don't see those as being in the market to take over that sort of 10, 15 million user base. If they did, especially when it comes to Bricks, I'll talk about Bricks, I can't talk about Breakdance, like I say. If we take a look at Bricks, for example, if that was the goal, then I think there would be a free version in the same way that's how Elementor really got into such a massive user base, was a pretty well-spec'd free version that allowed a lot of users to do more than enough in a simplistic kind of way with a nice drag and drop interface. But like I say, as that's become more feature rich and as that becomes closer to more intermediate level tools, with the container, with the ability to use Flexbox and CSS Grid and so on, I see that gap, like I say, closing, which means that the barrier to entry on all those products starts to level out. And the whole sort of myth that to be able to use something like Bricks, you have to have a development background or you have to be, understanding of CSS and HTML and JavaScript and so on, I don't agree with it. I think it can benefit you, and I think you can definitely use a tool like Bricks more efficiently and more effectively, but I don't think you need it to be able to create accessible, fast-loading, well-designed, well-put-together websites that have clean code underneath it. I don't think that. There's maybe a bit of a steeper learning curve, but I think it's perfectly in the realms of anybody to be able to take that tool and be able to create great websites with it. So that's what I think anyway. Video Boy, totally different thing. Is it okay to put expiry date on project quotes? Absolutely. I would always put, or I have always put into mind that the price is effective for the next 30 days from the date that I've actually sent out the quote or estimate. And that way it allows you to, if, let's just say something happened in the market that the software you were going to use to build the website, for example, suddenly doubled in price, well, you're not going to be lumbered with a massive increase and a lot, sort of a loss in revenue or loss of return. You have that flexibility inside there. So I would always put a 30 days from the date that you supply or submit that quote. Then, like I say, it adds a little bit of an incentive for them to pull their fingers out and, pay up if they want to move forward with the project. Okay, let's have a little look. What everyone else saying? Robert, I had to delay the release of the pro version of my plugin because I tried to add too many new features at once. It created too much potential for an overwhelming amount of problems for me. I could totally understand why that would be the case. If you are just a one-man band or you're a very small development team, let's just say 2 or 3 people, support is massive when it comes to adding features in. So I would say rolling out a smaller number of features, testing those out and so on, makes so much more sense. But then when you take a look at something like Elementor, for example, which have multiple teams working on multiple different parts of the plugin and the ecosystem and so on. And that's the thing we do have to bear in mind. It's not one massive team that's focused on just one part of Elementor. There's multiple different teams focusing on different parts of the overall builder platform and so on. So we do need to bear that in mind when people make comments about like, oh, why did you do this when you should have spent time on that? They're probably different teams working on it. But I think this is the thing is, I would much rather someone like you, Robert, focus on one feature and make that feature a killer feature than try to work on 5 features and each one of them is only half realized. I think the end user, a good example of this is generate press and generate blocks. They were notoriously sort of dogged upon because of the slow development cycle, that updates weren't coming out that often and there weren't new features being added in. And while I kind of understand that, actually using generate press and generate blocks for my own projects and for commercial projects, I actually appreciate the speed in which these things actually are released, because it means I don't have to stress all the time that there's a new update every other week. And I don't have to worry about there's features being released all the time that are half-baked or they don't work or there's an issue or something like that. All those things add to the frustration of working, especially when you're doing this commercially. So sometimes the slow and steady is actually quite a good way of working, especially, like I say, for smaller teams or individuals that are working on plugins, themes, those types of things. But like I say, I would still much rather one feature being developed, let's say per team, but that being released in its, it doesn't have to be its full and final form, but I think as close to that as is possible, and then maybe look at how do you make it better, how do you add and expand the feature set. But I don't see the point in releasing things that are literally just half of what's required. So that's kind of my take on it. But I totally get where you're coming from, Robert. And I would say in a situation like yours, that makes absolute sense. Slow and steady, release a good product, release it where people are not fearful of updates, and especially when there's frequent updates. Anyway, Sparrow Cache, sorry. Does block visibility plugin fill a purpose in Bricks, or is there a function in Bricks where you don't need block visibility plugin? You don't need the block visibility plugin unless, of course, you were using Bricks to design the overall website, your templates and that, and then you were letting your end user use Gutenberg functionality inside designing, let's just say, the pages or the posts, whatever you're kind of allowing them access to, at which point then I could say that there would be a use for it, because you've designed your theme and your templating structure using Bricks, but the end user, your client, is not accessing that aspect of the overall tool set. They're reliant upon, using Gutenberg or, whatever block tool you kind of want to use inside there. Then I would say something like the block visibility plugin would be useful. But if everything is just Bricks only, then there's absolutely no use for it, I would say. Hope that answered the question. Okay, let's have a look. I have no idea what your name is on this, so I do apologize. I'm not going to try. For real work, I need Crockleblock Jet Engine. That's the reason I use Elementor. I suppose at the end of the day, it comes down to what you need for Jet Engine, because, Bricks is supporting Jet Engine. I don't know how much it's supported at the moment, but I'm pretty sure that the main functionality is supported inside there. It may be worth taking a little look anyway to see how much integration there is between those two platforms right now. Now, don't forget, hit that thumbs up button if you are getting value from today's live stream. Let's have a look. What else do we have? Andre, do you see something like an open source self-hosted Webflow thing coming in the next couple of years? If it happened, WordPress would lose lots of users. I don't really see it happening anytime soon. I think primarily because the benefit of something like Webflow is that you have this kind of closed ecosystem. So your hosting, the software, the updates, the security, everything is kind of managed in the same place. So to try and take something like that and then extricate it from there and make it open source and all the things that come with open source, which is probably some of the things that we, don't necessarily like 100% sometimes when it comes to, WordPress and so on. Never say never, but I don't see it in the imminent future that something like that would happen. I think probably the closest you're going to get to something like that would be something like Pinegrow or something, but then that's not self-hosted. That's more, well, actually, you can kind of host it, I think. Yeah, so I don't imagine that would be the case. And hi to Brazil. Okay, what else do we have? Elementor stinks of venture capitalist or VC. Yeah, you wouldn't be the first person to say that, Isaac. And I think, whatever the situation is now, I really do think that the VC investment that they had several years ago, long term, has hurt in certain respects. Yes, they picked up multiple millions of users, and if that's what the overall goal was, then they've done very, very well. I think they've lost credibility in a lot of areas, especially with those people that are beyond the hobbyist that maybe want to take it a little bit more serious. I think this is where it kind of ties into the whole sort of why I think tools like Bricks like Breakdance and so on, where they are picking up a lot of users that historically would have used Elementor, but have kind of got frustrated for various different reasons. Tyler, I've always used Elementor simply because I didn't know of any other option. I first heard of Bricks on your channel recently, and it's a whole other level. Now, I don't know, Tyler, have you tried Bricks? Let me know. Reply back to the comment here and let me know, have you actually tried it? Because I'd love to know if you tried it, what your thoughts were. Did you find it difficult, confusing? Let me know, because I would love to know. But the one thing I would say, and I talk to a lot of people when it comes to Bricks, and I kind of keep an eye on the different, on my Facebook group and the Bricks Facebook group and so on. And I think this is where, like with Kevin Geary's 101, Page Builder 101, with my content, with Imran's series on, using Bricks, with Dave Foy's courses and things along those lines, there's a lot of really solid tutorials and help out there now to help you get to grips with the fundamentals of using Bricks. So I can't disagree that when you first look, especially if you come from a tool like Elementor or something like that, if you come from Oxygen, chances are it's probably a little easier because there's probably more similarities there, especially when you're working with a class-first builder. But what I would suggest is don't be put off. It's very easy to sort of start dabbling with something like Bricks and then get kind of confused because things are very different in certain respects to Elementor. But once you kind of get past that initial learning curve, which probably won't take most people more than just a couple of hours, which sounds like a long time, but when you realize that on a project, you would probably save that amount of time just working on that one project, that it makes sense to spend it and invest in, your education, your skill set, understanding tools that may be better for a given type of project. I think it's really is worth investing the time. And you can test it. You don't have to spend any money. You can test that. There's a Brick sort of, what's it called, sandbox, which I think the site can be up for, I think it's 5 days or 7 days or something like that. So you can easily get stuck in, watch a couple of tutorials, run along and sort of see exactly how it all works, get a feel for it, get your feet wet. And then if you find that it actually makes sense, then maybe take a look at buying a license. But the fact that you can try it before you buy it, and you can do this as many times as you want to, I don't see any reason not to invest that time, unless, of course, you just simply don't have the time. I think it's probably in your best interest, Tyler, to spend a little time to get to grips with it, because I think once you do and you understand how powerful a class-based sort of system is, you won't look back at a tool like Elementor or anyone that doesn't use a class-based, whether it's a framework or just using the class system that's inside the actual builder itself. I think you'll very quickly come to the realization that that is the way forward if you want to do things quicker, more efficiently, more scalable. And once you've kind of created your own, let's just say, template site, like I say, whether you use a framework or not, you can easily deploy things and then you can be up and running, designing things and putting sites together so quick. When you want to work with CSS Grid, you want to work with Flexbox, all those kinds of things, it's so much easier, in my opinion, inside Bricks than it is inside something like Elementor. But like I say, it's worth investing the time just to kind of get your feet wet and get a little bit of a basic understanding of how it all works. Gutenberg is going to chew up much of Elementor's market share. In some regards, I would say you're probably right. I do think if you're talking about like Gutenberg with full site editing and those kinds of things, I think there's still a long ways to go because it's just so disjointed at this point in time. There needs to be a lot more cohesion brought into full site editing, the actual dashboard itself of WordPress and Gutenberg. But yes, anything I think that's free and grows to the point where it becomes a viable option will take market share from something like Elementor. At this point in time, I think it'll be pretty minimal because I still think Gutenberg isn't really the nicest environment to work in. Daniel, do you think it's possible to build an app with WordPress plus Elementor plus Jet Engine? Are you talking like a standalone app that you'd actually then just sort of have on your phone or something? In which case, you probably could. I don't really have any experience in doing it myself, so I couldn't say with any certainty whether it would be a viable option with that tool set. I would question if there are better ways of doing it. You can have these sort of no-code conversion tools that'll take a website and convert it into an app of sorts. But whether or not that's actually a viable option, I'd have to question. But like I say, I don't really have any experience in it myself, so I can't say with certainty whether it would be a viable kind of tool set to be able to build an app. But possible, probably. A good way of working, maybe not the best. Elementor is dying. Also, why is it too hard to find a great Elementor widget tutorial? I don't know if Elementor's dying. I saw your comment, I think, on my video from yesterday. I think there's a long way before Elementor passes away and we'll say RIP. Like I say, I do think that we are seeing a decline, probably a tiny, tiny decline. And I'm talking more about the pro take-up than I am talking about the free take-up. Free is free, and a lot of people will still find that's more than enough for what they want. When it comes to handing over money, that's a different thing altogether. And like I said earlier on in the stream, the fact that they are now feature stripping the lowest tier version, and I don't care how they want to wrap it up, that's exactly what they're doing. They're feature stripping it. They're saying, if you want access to these features, you now have to pay for 3 licenses, which is $99. As I've said in previous live streams, as I commented when that first came out on the Facebook group, the Elementor Facebook group, I would have rather seen, I think it would have been much better for their PR to said, there's a $29 version, which gives you access to one site and strips out those features. So it's like the intermediary between the free tier and the pro tier, because not everybody wants dynamic tags and those kinds of things. Well, let them pay less money and then keep the $49 version to be the full fat version with one license, and then the 3 and so on. That to me would have been a much fairer way of working, but as we know, Elementor will take their own path and people will vote with their wallets. There will be people that will not pay that. Like I said before, the biggest frustration for a lot of users, especially when it comes to, working with clients, is a lot of people like to they'll develop the site and then they'll say to the client, from now on, you pay for the license for Elementor. Well, that's a hard pill to swallow to say it's gone from $49 to $99 and you get absolutely nothing more for it. 3 licenses, who gives a damn? If the client is buying it for themselves, 2 licenses are a waste of time. It's like buying 3 times the fuel your car needs, but nowhere to put the 2 times extra. You've got no extra buckets or barrels or anything to put in, so you just basically pour it straight down the drain. It's the same thing. You are effectively saying you are paying double the amount of money for things that you don't have any use for whatsoever, just to keep the functionality that you would have had moving forward. I know this is all retrospective, and I know that you're grandfathered in, but that doesn't help new users and new clients that now have to pay $99 for the same thing they would have paid $49 for, a month ago. Just my take on it anyway. But Diane, I don't think so just yet. What do we have? Right, bear with me. Let me just have a little through because there's a lot of new ones on here. Okay, what have we got? Gustavo, I switched from Elementor 2017 to 2021 to Bricks in 2021. Honestly speaking, the learning curve, at least for me, was quite slow, about 3 months, but it was a game changer. And chances are, even though, like you said, that there was a steep learning curve, and if you kind of go back 2021, so we're talking, 2 to 3 years ago, there wasn't a huge amount of resources available for Bricks to learn it and those kinds of things. So yes, the learning curve then, even though there weren't as many features as there are now, the learning curve would absolutely be much, much steeper because, at the end of the day, if there's less training material and less help and support there, it makes it harder to learn it. But now I think that 3 months that you took to learn would probably be down to 1, maybe 1.5, because there's such an abundance now of great material that's coming out, teaching you how to use things, and not just from the basics point of view, but also best practices and things along those lines. All credit to Kevin Geary for the content he's putting out there. Like the guy or load the guy. There's a lot of great content that he puts out. Take out the opinion and all the kind of thing that goes with it and just take the actual education out of those videos. And there's a lot of really useful information inside there. So, like I say, whether you like the person or you don't like the person or the teaching methods or anything else, there's still a lot of information to be found there on best practices, how to use various different functions inside Bricks. So I think the learning curve would be a little bit less steep these days because there's so much more content out there to help you get up and running so much quicker. But I'm glad to see that you did stick with it and that you found that it was a good move. And like you say, it was a game changer. And I think this is the thing. Once you kind of realize how there are better ways of building websites, faster, more efficient ways of working with cleaner code output and so on, the benefits far outweigh the time that you may need to invest in learning and understanding how that tool works. So that's kind of where I would be with that. But I'm glad that you stuck with it and that it was the right decision for you. Scribbles down petrol analogy in my big book of analogies. Oh, I got plenty of analogies. Lots of them even might actually make sense. Well, some of them occasionally. But, sometimes you've got to kind of come up with a way of putting it in your own mind. But it kind of is for me that, I know there was a lot of justification on the Facebook group about, how you got to look at it and things like that. But the reality is they feature stripped. Simple as that, they feature stripped. There's no two ways about it. You pay the same amount of money and you get less features. That's called feature stripping. Gustavo, exactly, Paul. Honestly, the switch to bricks helped me to improve my best practices and CSS coding skills. Feel better now as a developer than before, for sure. And chances are you are probably more efficient. If you're working with clients, you are more profitable because you are more efficient. If it takes you half the time to build the same website and half the time to maintain, update, and support the client, but you're charging them the same amount of money, then you are effectively much, much more efficient and much more profitable in what you're doing, which is great. And like I say, this ultimately is what we're looking for, is to make our lives easier, smoother, faster, and less friction. And tools like bricks will actually do that. They'll help you. Like I say bricks, you can hand code this. It makes no difference to me whatsoever. But if you use the same practices, let me give you an example. Going back to when I built my own CMS years ago with a rapid application development toolkit kind of thing. Sounds really cool, but it's not. Once you start to open your eyes to things like, what's the term I'm looking for? Includes and things like that. And if anybody doesn't know what an include is, imagine like a template for your header and a template for your footer, and you set a condition up, and that'll be used on every single page of your website. Or you have a condition that uses on your website, but then if you have a custom dashboard, it has a different header and footer section, and you use includes to do it. These are things that when you realize how useful these simple little things are, they improve your efficiency. And this is where tools like, working with frameworks, working with conditional logic, templating systems, and so on, things that we now take for granted, they just speed up and make you much more efficient in so many different ways. It's a real eye-opener. Anyway, again, I'm going to say it again. Hit that thumbs up button if you're enjoying it. Hit that thumbs up button if you want Imran to use my petrol analogy in his live stream tomorrow in some way, shape, or form. Let's get a couple of thumbs up to let me know if that's what you want to do. And also, just let me know in the comments if you think that Imran should definitely use that petrol analogy at least once every live stream for the next month. I think that would be fun. And we will obviously monitor and check him out. And if he doesn't, we will penalize him heavily. And he will never talk about Uranus or his anus ever again. If you don't understand that one, I'm sorry. It probably just doesn't make a lot of sense in a lot of ways. But hey, it's all fun until someone loses an eye. Okay. What is your impression of the future of Gutenberg and its direction? In my opinion, Gutenberg was designed as a simple article editor, but the features of a website editor don't fit into the design. Where can I go with this? I think Gutenberg itself is much better than it used to be, and it's much better than the classic editor. As difficult it is to say that from coming from the old way of working, it is better in that respect. I do agree that the whole website editor side of things, I would have much rather them left it to the way that we're used to working with it. Using page builders, those kinds of things. I think full site editing is just, I know Jamie from WordPress would probably hate me saying it and would disagree with me profusely. I just think it's painful to use. I really do. It's not a nice way of working at all. Will it get better? I don't really see it getting that much better because I think the foundations have been laid, and I think with those foundations, I think that's a pretty good example of what we can expect to see and how it's going to operate for the foreseeable future. I would have much rather them taken on board a company that had a track record of working with, let's just say, page builders, wouldn't have to use that same methodology, but just an understanding of how it all works, and used someone like that, a company like that, to actually build out what they would consider to be, Gutenberg, as it were. I just think full site editing is just not intuitive. It really isn't. I think there's a lot of work to be done before everything comes together in like a cohesive setup At the moment, as I said earlier on in the stream, I've said many times before, you've got the dashboard, which looks one way, you've got full site editing, which looks another, and then you have Gutenberg itself, which looks another way. There's still so much functionality that's missing. I mean, for example, typography, fonts, font management, and so on. Surely, if you've got a blog, one of the most fundamental things that you want in that blog is control over typography. But yet we still don't have that functionality. That was pushed from 6.4, which is currently out, to 6.5, which is due out around March of this year. But whether it actually makes it into that is, again, debatable. We never know. So it's just a shame, that it's taking this long. I can appreciate why it's taking a long time with certain aspects of it, because if you are powering 40+% of the internet, that's an awful lot of websites, and changing core functionality isn't something you want to piss off your user base. But I also think they approached it in a stupid way. I'm pretty sure that I was watching something the other day and Kevin Geary said the same thing, and I've said this in the past. Why didn't they just make, for those people that just literally want to create a blog, I don't really care too much about the more intermediate advanced ways of building websites and laying things out and using, WordPress as a CMS backend and, those kinds of things. Why didn't they just develop Gutenberg inside the WordPress.com system, which has the hosting and limited access to resources and things, and just use that? And then take the self-hosted CMS version that we're all used to and just let that go with page builders and forget all about trying to shoehorn in full site editing and so on. I don't disagree that Gutenberg as a, let's just say, a content editing tool is good. It's robust enough for what you need to do. But I still think when it comes to the design aspect, the functionality, and the more intermediate and advanced features, it would be so much better to just work with Bricks, Elementor, Breakdance, Oxygen, those kinds of tools, and let those sit on the the .org, the self-hosted, and .com be more of a Wix stroke simplified version of Squarespace, or a simple Webflow type environment. Maybe even offer the two kind of levels inside there for the one that just wants to be click a template, change the text, change some images, job done, I'm ready to go, to the more hands-on-y kind of people, and then just leave the .org and the self-hosted for the more intermediate advanced customization, use it as a CMS backend, use your page builders with it and so on. Would have made more sense in my opinion. Anyway. Okay. Brian, I've been learning bricks. It's pretty robust. Kevin's PB 101 and Imran's courses have been very helpful. What's your position on incorporating automatic CSS or advanced thema? I don't use automatic CSS or ACSS. I have dabbled with it and it is a solid tool. For me, I preferred Core Framework, not because it's a better setup, it's just it resonated more with me. So I think whatever CSS framework you choose to employ with bricks, I think is a good thing. I honestly do. What you choose is entirely up to you. I think everyone will have their own flavor and their own way of working and what they're looking for out of something like a framework. So I think incorporating that into your design process, absolutely. Advanced thema, to be honest, I would never give Maxim my money. I think he's a terrible, terrible individual, and I would never, ever give him my money. I am, of course, joking. Please, I'm just joking. Advanced thema is one of those things that, do you need it? No. Same way you don't need automatic CSS or core framework. Does it make sense to include it? Absolutely. Because you can customize the interface, you can customize how you work, you can streamline and speed up things that you do when it comes to working inside the bricks environment, that once you get used to it and you've tweaked it and you've set up the way that you like it, to take that out and start using just the vanilla interface, you kind of feel like you've got one hand behind your back and you're trying to work just one-handed. So you don't need it, but I think it's something that's very useful to include as part of your tech stack. Imran, take care, my good man, and I'll probably see you on your live stream tomorrow, and we'll catch up very, very soon. And, take care. I'll see you soon. So yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I think it's a good way of working. I think it opens up your tech stack. And it streamlines your workflow. But you don't need them. But I do think they are useful to have as part of everything else. Okay, Cam, what are the best bricks add-ons that I use? If we're talking about specifically me, I've only got 3 add-ons that I actually use, 2 of which I would use on every project, one if I needed those features. I use Advanced Themer and I use Core Framework with the bricks add-on side of things for that. The other one, which I can never seem to remember, is I got one bricks plugin, and I bought it because actually 2 things I would probably talk about then. I can't think of the add-ons name off the top of my head. Everything's bricks something, but I like this one because it was a bit more advanced when it comes to tools. There's tools that you've got inside bricks itself, and some tools you don't have inside there. But the implementation was a little bit more advanced and thoughtful. So I kind of thought, well, for the amount of money it costs for the lifetime deal on that, I invested into it because I thought, well, there's some tools in there that I can see myself using, things like advanced accordions and things like that. I just can't think of the name of it off the top of my head. The other one that I would always recommend, and this isn't specifically to this particular sort of design set, I bought Bricks Maven, which is a template library for bricks. And the reason that I bought into something like this is not specifically because I would want to use it on client or commercial projects, but because I create a lot of tutorials, a lot of content. BricksForge. I do have BricksForge Cam, which is very, very good, but I think that's very much if you need the functionality in that, but that's not the one I was thinking of. I'll see if I can find it in a moment. I'll have a look at my Facebook account and I'll see what's on there. I bought into Bricks Maven, like I say, which is a template library. And there's lots out there. I mean, if you're an ACSS user, then it makes sense to take a look at Frames, which is Kevin Geary's sort of design library or template library that works specifically with ACSS, which obviously was a good natural fit. For Bricks Maven, you've got a core framework version, you have an ACSS version, and you have a vanilla version. But the reason that I bought that, or I bought something like that, is because Bricks Extras, well done, Andy Tate, is because it means that I can rapidly put a site together for a tutorial. I don't have to go through the time and effort of either building a site from scratch every single time or having something that's the same every single time that makes it sometimes problematic to demonstrate a new tutorial or something like that. But also it's great if you want to rapidly deploy things like landing pages, or you want to prototype a design and you want to get feedback and you don't want to spend days working on it. Because if you're like me, when you design for yourself, you're the own worst bloody enemy. You'll be there forever more tweaking stupid little things that have no real benefit to you whatsoever. But I would say if you are looking for a good starter tool set and you want to invest into tools to go around bricks, like I say, you don't need any of these. You don't need them at all. I would say a framework, because it just speeds up the whole design process, whether that's ACSS, Core Framework, or another one. I would say some form of design library, template library, that's wireframes and so on, can be very useful because it allows you, like I say, to rapidly deploy and test things out. Advanced Themer, because it just makes life so much easier when you're working inside the editor and you can customize it and tweak it. There's lots of little quality of life things. Will they be introduced into bricks moving forward? Maybe. There's probably going to be times where there'll be features in there that will then overlap and be adopted and absorbed into the actual editor itself, at which point you won't need those. And I'm sure Maxim will probably end up taking those out to keep things streamlined. But those would be the things that I would say you need or that they'd be beneficial to your workflow at the bare minimum. If you want to go beyond that, then, like I say, you've got things like Bricks Extras, you've got, so many different things, BricksForge, which is very, very powerful. But like I say, you don't necessarily need these tools, but they can be quite useful if you want them. Okay. M. Hassan, kindly start more detailed GeneratePress series to make beautiful static homepages of blog sites and agency business sites. I am going to be working on some more tutorials when it comes to GeneratePress and Generate Blocks. There'll be a dedicated website, much the same as I've got learnbricksbuilder.com. There will be a learngenerateblocks.com website, which will have all my dedicated tutorials on there. So there are more tutorials coming, but up until the end of the year, there was a lot of other things I wanted to take care of. 2024, I think my focus is going to be a little bit more, streamlined, shall we say. And primarily the content is going to be on bricks and also GeneratePress and Generate Blocks. There will be some other things in there as well, but not a huge amount, I wouldn't have thought. Okay, so as I said before, if you've got any questions, any comments, anything at all, please do let me know. I'm going to sort of wrap things up in about 10 minutes. So if you have any questions for me, please do drop them in the chat. And yeah, okay. Video boy, what's the difference between advanced thema and micro thema? Advanced thema is all about streamlining and enhancing your workflow inside the Bricks editor and only inside the Bricks editor. So you've got things like there's improved options for handling like frameworks, your class system, colors. You could even use it to design your own framework. You wouldn't need to use something like ACSS. So if you're comfortable with creating your own frameworks, then you could use advanced thema to be able to handle that side of things. There's lots of tweaks and interface enhancements to make working with the editor itself way more powerful. There's AI functionality built into it if you want to tie that into your ChatGPT account. There are so many functions that are added in through advanced thema, all of which are totally optional. You can turn them on, you can turn them off, so you can customize everything to the way that you want it to be. Whereas micro thema is a visual way of editing and customizing CSS on a given site. So it has a very different use case. The thing with micro thema, which I'm not the biggest fan of, but I can understand why they've done it, is once you install that on a domain, that license key is tied to that domain and can never be released. Whereas with advanced thema, it's a different thing altogether. Like I said, totally different set of tools. Micro thema is more of a visual CSS editor. And if you've ever used something like CSS Hero, they're very similar kinds of tools. So if you don't understand CSS, or you want to have an environment where working with CSS is much more visual inside a nicer editor, then micro thema is probably a good way forward. But yeah, so there's a big difference between the two. Advanced thema is all about streamlining and enhancing and tweaking Bricks interface and the functionality, the core functionality and some of the extended functionality, whereas micro thema is more of a CSS, visual CSS editor for your pages and your sites. Hope that makes sense. Let's have a little look. John Pixel, do you plan any more core framework tutorials videos? Absolutely. One of the ones I'll be releasing hopefully in the next couple of weeks will be an introduction to creating your first page with core framework and Bricks Builder. So it'll be showing you from scratch, from a blank canvas, how I would build, for example, like a landing page or something like that. You know, not going to be a particularly complex page, but it's going to show you the fundamentals and show you how you can tie working with a framework like core framework with Bricks to create an actual end result. Whereas the previous video release was more a case of this is how you get started using some of the basic functionality. There was no real end result. This tutorial will be about an end result. And will that expand? Possibly. I'm also considering doing some form of either membership site specific to Bricks or a course or some micro courses. There'll be some kind of things like that in the future. Micro courses I quite like the idea of because it keeps the cost down and I can be very specific about what I want to cover in this. So there may be one on, you know, building your first site with Bricks and core framework, for example. I don't know yet. There's still ideas that are up in the air. But yes, there will be more tutorials on core framework and Bricks. So yes, they will be coming too. Okay. No problem, York. Thanks for the content you produced the last year and looking forward to more great content this year. My question today is, how can I download Bricks forms as PDF on Submit? I don't believe you've got that functionality built in. I don't think Bricks Forge has that functionality. When it comes to working with PDF side of things, there's not really been any particularly great ways of working, but it's not, I don't believe it's built into Bricks itself. I haven't come across anything that will allow you to create auto-generate PDFs from a form created inside Bricks. So unless anybody in the chat or in the comment section on a replay have an answer to that one, by all means, please do jump in. But I don't really know too much about it myself. James, have you tested out the new Jet Engine Timber Twig Builder? It seems to be a bit of a mess. I haven't really tested much out with Jet Engine for quite some time. I've kind of streamlined and stripped back the tool set that I use, and I've always kind of been a ACF user. I've used Jet Engine in the past for some projects, and you know, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of things to really like about Jet Engine, but most of my projects don't require the sheer amount of functionality that's included in Jet Engine, and ACF has kind of fit my workflow a little bit better, plus the fact that now we have taxonomies and custom post types built into it. I have one less plugin I've got to worry about. So I'm not really a jet engine user at this point in time. So I haven't tested it out. But the one thing I will say historically, and I don't know if this will be the case here, is I've always noticed when when Crocoblock release a new product or a new part of a product, that the first couple of iterations generally tend to be a little bit ropey. But they do come good as they move forward. And I say, I'm talking specifically from like the jet engine side of things. I've never really touched most of the other Crocoblock tools. Everything that I've ever really done has been the dynamic side of things. And like I say, they've started off, sometimes it can be a little bit sort of flaky, a little bit ropey, not necessarily the best, but that has generally improved over the next few months and then developed into a pretty robust product. So hopefully that'll be the same things here with the Timber Twig integration, but I don't know. Like I say, I've never really used it myself. Greetings, Vikas. Glad to see you in. I hope everything's okay with you and business is good. For anybody that doesn't know, Vikas is the main person that I know behind InstaWP, which, if anybody knows, was one of my most favorite tools last year, and I use it every single day, probably 100 times a day. It's the quickest way to spin up WordPress that I've ever come across, and it's just so nice to work with. So good to see you in, Vikas. I hope everything's okay and you had a fantastic holiday and the new year started out really, really well for you. Keep up the good work, and I hope to see InstaWP grow even bigger in 24. Okay. Why do you choose Core Framework over ACSS? I also find Core Framework more appealing, but it looks like most people use ACSS and more functions. It's whether you want those more functions. You know, I don't think, for me, let me just give you from my point of view, and this is solely from my point of view. I know there are people out there like Dave Foy, for example, absolutely love ACSS, and I can't dog on it because there's nothing to dog on with it. It is a solid product that gets a lot of love and respect. For me, I just kind of found that I resonated just a little bit better with Core Framework. There was no real conscious decision to say I want to choose this one over this one. It was just a case of I tried ACSS and I just found that there was just so many definitions to try to remember. And at the time I tried it, they hadn't bought Plaster, which was a way of sort of being able to right click and then see all the different classes and so on and quickly choose from there. So maybe that was a part of the influencing factor that I kind of found that Core Framework was a little less intimidating with the amount of functions that you had to try to remember to integrate into it. But I think with any of these tools, familiarity is going to be the key to getting the most out of any of them. So I think you choose whichever is the right one for you. You can test out, for example, Core Framework. You don't need to pay anything on that. You can use the online creation tool to be able to test it out and see exactly what's going on. You don't even need to have the Bricks add-on if you want to test it out inside, Bricks itself. It's a lot faster, a lot more integrated if you do. But if you're an advanced themer user, you can pull in all the definitions from the Core Framework without using the Bricks plugin and pull those into Advanced Themer and then use the Advanced Themers options to quickly select the various different definitions for your classes. So there's lots of ways that you could do it without even spending any additional money if you're an Advanced Themer user, for example. So I chose it just because I kind of felt it resonated just a little bit more with me. But that's not to say one is better than the other. One has strengths, the other one has weaknesses, and vice versa. You choose the one that you want that works the best for you. Hope that answered the question, Cam. Thank you, Vikas. Thank you very much. It is looking quite good. It doesn't look quite as good in the flesh when you see like little bits of tape and things up there holding cables out the way. But as long as it looks good on screen, that's all that matters. Anyway. Okay, so I'm going to wrap things up in a couple of minutes. I've been on an hour already, which is crazy. So look, okay, so for me, CF is more flexible and customizable, but ACSS is more established, has more robust community. I love both of them, and I've chosen CF because of how customizable it is. This is the point. I mean, I think John kind of hit the nail on the head. This is a product that kind of resonated a little bit more with him. He kind of felt that was the right choice for him, but it doesn't negate the fact that, for example, Core Framework, so for example, ACSS is a very robust product with a lot of users, a solid user base, and so on. So it's pretty cool that we have these choices. And that's the beauty of tools like this. We have choices. We can choose what we want. You know, plus, I think for a lot of people, the fact that you don't have to pay for a core framework, but if you're a Bricks user and you want the integration with Bricks, it's now 119 euros. That's unlimited lifetime. So you never have to pay anything more than that. Whereas ACSS is $400 for 100 websites per, well, that's the lifetime, I believe. But it's whether you want to spend that. And people go like, but that's only going to be $4 per website. That's great if you have 100 clients using it. If you have 5 clients using it, it's not $4 per license. You know, people have to bear that side of things in mind. But you pick what you want, whatever you think is the right one for you. Okay, so I'm going to wrap things up here, if you don't mind, everybody. What's that? Sorry. Thanks for the answers. In my opinion, you were the most fair and honest on YouTube about WordPress. I also want to praise the excellent lighting and staging. Thank you very much. Thank you very much on all this. I try to be unbiased. I think we all have a bias in us. You know, we buy tools, we spend money on different things, we learn different tools, and we have our favorites when it comes to various different tools. But that doesn't negate what other tools are out there. You know, what works for me, I like Core Framework, the next person likes ACSS, the next person maybe likes Windows. Doesn't matter. As long as they work for you and they improve your workflow, that's all that bloody matters. You know, we've talked about this in live streams in the past. I don't like tribalism when it comes to tools and software and plugins. They are there to do a job. That job will make our lives easier, make us money, make us more efficient, whatever it is. When you start attacking someone else for their choices, that's when things become a little bit silly. It's a tool. And by having that attitude, you end up becoming the tool, as it were. So anyway, that's what I wanted to sort of say. So thank you very much. I'm glad you do think that my answers are honest. I try to be as honest as possible. And yeah, thank you very much. Anyway, thanks very much for joining me on today's live stream. It's been an absolute pleasure to spend an hour with you guys talking, answering questions, and so on and so forth. There will be more of these live streams moving forward into 2024. I aim to do at least one a week. It'll probably be on a different day, maybe different times until I kind of lock things in. But I also have a couple of really cool live stream events coming up over the next few weeks that I'll be talking about in a little bit more detail and putting some information out there. So if you are interested in Bricks Builder, learning more about web design, those kinds of things, be sure to keep in touch with what's going on the channel. Join up to the Facebook group. It's absolutely free. Just do a search for WPTuts on Facebook. You know the kinds of things we're talking about. Anyway, look after yourselves. Take care. Have a fantastic rest of your day. And thank you so much for spending an hour with me this afternoon talking about all things WordPress and everything beyond. Take care. Look after yourselves. And I'll see you all really, really soon.